Yo,
What up? What's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Love God, Love Sex podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ethan Maxwell.
Yo, what's good, everybody? It's Jamie.
Yeah, we're doing a different format today, doing some different content. We actually want to do a review show because we saw this very powerful, pivotal episode hosted by Shan Boodram. For those who don't know, Shan Boodram is a sexologist and runs the podcast Lovers and Friends. Definitely check it out. And she had on the remarkable KevOnStage, who is a well-known comedian. He started off with the Playmakers, this kind of Christian comedy group, and has grown his own digital media imprint along with his wife, Mrs. KevOnStage. And they have a book out, which is called Marriage Be Hard.
Marriage be hard.
Marriage Be Hard. I said, Lord, it's so hard. So tired, Lord.
Real talk, though.
And Shan hosted them, had them onto her podcast to talk about the specific chapter, Sex Be Hard, with a particular emphasis on long-term sex and all the ups and downs of long-term sex. So with that said, let's just get right into it. I want to talk about reaction to the episode. What was your overall reaction to the app?
I thought it was good, bro. I really appreciated the transparency that they talked with. You know, a lot of times Christian couples are not apt to be honest and open about some of the things that they experience, especially as it relates to sex. So yeah, I was happy to see how transparent they are and talk about things that I could relate to as somebody who's been married. You know, you could relate to. But the one thing that I think stood out the most was this point that Shan made about the 7-year itch, which I guess she said it was a statistic that showed that after 7 years, or in the 7th year, is the year that a lot of married couples or couples in general experience the slump of, you know, we've been having sex on autopilot, or we've had this kind of passion, this kind of intimacy for 7 years. And then after that, it kind of goes downhill or it fades. And couples are kind of faced with the reality of redefining what intimacy, good sex, and all of that stuff looks like. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I thought the episode really brought to bear the ups and downs of married or committed life. Monogamy, you know, you could be committed and be polyamory, but I mean, in the case of monogamy, and all of the intricate details that need to be managed to achieve a thriving sex life, it becomes very difficult. And we'll get into this in the app a little bit further down. What needs to happen in order for a thriving sex life to be present?
Oh, you know what needs to happen.
So you need to put your
get on all fours and let me get the business.
Well, but you know, all the ins and outs, no pun intended, of what needs to happen to have a thriving sex life. And it was really refreshing to hear a Christian couple really talk about this. So, you know, let's get into the first concept or the first kind of point that we felt was important to bring here, which is the marriage bed is undefiled. Undefiled. Marriage bed, undefiled. So for those who don't know, you know, you may be from a different Christian community or you may be a non-Christian. The marriage bed undefiled is a snippet, a line taken from scripture, from Corinthians, where the Apostle Paul, some may know him as Saint Paul, was talking to the church in Corinth and was talking about various acts around sex. It's not a whole elaborate scripture about sex. Actually, can you just find it?
Yeah, I was going to say it's from Hebrews 13.
Oh, I was wrong. So that Corinthians, great.
Marriage is honorable among all, and the marriage bed, undefiled. But fornicators and adulterers, God will judge.
Yeah, so there's a whole lot of context there, which we're not going to get into. New Testament context, who's a fornicator, who's an adulterer. But that little snippet of the marriage bed is undefiled has been used in purity culture in typically Black Baptist or even larger evangelical Christian circles to, I would say, convince or persuade.
Brainwash.
Convince or persuade. Don't listen to this dude. It's convince or persuade young Christians from the ages of maybe 12 and up, once adolescence kicks in, puberty happens, to wait for marriage because the marriage bed is undefiled. What does that mean? If you're a young person and you're seeing your friends talk about all the joys and wonders of oral sex and getting it in, and
even masturbation,
yeah, exactly. and you're going to college and people are shooting DNA at each other and they're having a grand old time, the pastor would say, or the elders of the church would say,
wait, I say on the Lord.
Exactly. Hold on to God's unchanging hand. And you will experience a sex like no other once you said I do, once you sign that piece of paper, and once you've made your vows in front of God, family, and community. So the marriage bed is undefiled. Let's talk about that concept because Kev talked about it and how that's still a concept in the Christian church and how it impacted his marriage.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I don't want to say the church intentionally sells people this dream, but I feel like the messaging is kind of centered around there's this reward for waiting on the other side of I do sexually. You know what I mean? And it's like, a lot of people follow that doctrine and that dogma, and they'll say, I did it. You know what I mean? Other than one infraction that I had with my ex-wife before we got married, I partially bought into that. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like after I do and kiss, you're basically free to do whatever you want with this person or have whatever kind of sex you want to have with your partner. And I think I kind of bought into that a little bit, but I think the issue with it is that it doesn't really tell you how to process your thoughts about sex prior to marriage and your partner's thoughts about sex prior to marriage. You know what I mean? It can really kind of just make you think about only the image of freakiness that you've had this whole time and all these desires that you've had before marriage. It doesn't really teach you or hold space for putting those thoughts together and then kind of coming up with how y'all want to be freaks after y'all get married. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So the issue I have with the marriage bed undefiled is it's false marketing. It literally is false marketing. And what I mean by that is they're marketing, or they're trying to imply that once God gets involved in the bedroom, in your sex life, I mean, if you're dealing with a 6-incher, it's going to be supernatural 10. And brother, let me tell you right now, if you're dealing with that skinny, it's going to have girth to it. And let me tell you, the hollering and the hooping, that your neighbor's going to report you. And all the kinds of ways in which they try to imply that there's almost a magic to God's presence in your bedroom.
Yeah.
And listen, whatever your size is now, it's going to be your size.
After I do.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever issues you having now, you're going to have issues after I do.
Right.
The marriage bed undefiled, I think, in addition to that, the marriage bed undefiled problem is that it brings so many people into the space, like Jay said, with all these expectations while not giving them a template for talking and communication, which is the bedrock of great sex. It's the bedrock of great sex.
Communication is everything.
If you don't know what to expect and they don't know what to expect, you're going to have problems. Nothing magically is going to happen in the bedroom. Everything that happens in the bedroom is because you and your partner have made it happen.
Yeah.
Now, the biggest thing I think we should tell young people is just say, look, we're Christians, we're of this community. We believe that, the best opportunities happen in marriage. And there's research to show that now. Over 100 years of social science research around marriage. And those who are married live longer and they're healthier and they thrive more. And that's absolutely okay. We should tell young people in Christian communities that. I have no problem with that whatsoever.
And have better. Honestly, bro, a lot of the married couples that I know, what makes it better is that trust is there.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? And we've built this rapport with each other. I don't have to worry about the extra belly fat hanging over my belt. You know what I'm saying? Because you love me for me.
Yeah, exactly. Or at least you ain't gonna complain about it. You're gonna be respectful of the belly fat. And I think there's enough there just to tell people plainly, look, marriage is great. We want you to get married, and here's why. And give the reasons in a very logical, loving manner.
Right.
There's no reason to push a narrative that all of a sudden, whatever you've been watching on porno, you're going to be able to enact in the bedroom after I do on your wedding night, because you know what? That's a lie. What if you get with your partner and you want to do anal play and they ain't into that?
Right.
Now is the marriage, you know what I mean? Now,
right.
Did God disappoint you?
Right. And a lot of people will use that against their spouse.
Yeah.
It's like, it was supposed to be after I do, you're supposed to be the freak du jour. You're supposed to be, everything that I want you to be like you're supposed to be that vixen.
Yeah. You know how much sex I turned down to wait? But it's just like at the end of the day, well, that was just, you fell for false marketing. And we all have in most religious scenarios. And it's not just in Christianity, it happens in many religions. And that's a whole nother conversation. To kind of transition to this concept of the marriage bed is undefiled, let's talk about another piece that I thought was pretty interesting. Something you brought up. And it's the Just Cause ministry. And I wanted to address it. Right. So Just Cause means I'm going to honor my partner. In this case, because we're heterosexual man to woman, right? We're talking about showing up to the bedroom, showing up to the sex event or the sex time, and just making sex all about the woman. And so Shan Boodram talks about this, where she asked Mrs. KevOnStage, you guys have been married for 18 years. How many times has it just been about you, your pleasure? And, he's a comedian. He's like, maybe 2.5 times. And she's like, and Shan's like, so much of sex is the narrative of it starts with an erect penis, it ends with a soft penis. However that happens. And whatever happens in between there, the woman can just get, exactly. The low-hanging fruit you can pluck from a tree. Yeah. Do not eat from the tree, okay? So it's about that. And she talked about her husband recently just had a vasectomy, and 2 days later, she was like, you know what? I'm going to milk this. Just give me oral pleasure. And he did a great job. And she was laying there on her back in this state of bliss. Wow. He kind of just moved her hand
over to the joint.
Over this piece. Yeah. She's like, dang, like, why couldn't I just have this?
I can't just have this one night or something where it's just about me.
Yeah. And so Jay has always talked about this, you heard this in our prior season, and you've probably checked it if you haven't checked out our TikTok at Love God, Love Sex Pod, where we talk about, and Jay really emphasizes Just Cause ministry, just showing up and giving your partner, giving your spouse the best of all that you have and prioritizing their pleasure, even if that means, here comes the controversial moment, even if that means you don't get off.
No payoff.
No payoff.
Yeah, just giving to give as opposed to giving to get. And I mean, it's a concept that I feel like a lot of men struggle with because we have been conditioned to think there's really no sex unless there's penetration, or there's really no sex unless the penis is involved. Period. You know what I mean? You can have an incredible sexual experience without your man being involved. You know what I mean? It could just be hands and fingers and tongue. The tongue and all, like tongue. And mouth. And so, I think what I love about it is it paints the picture of one hand washing the other and both washing the face. It's kind of circular, this logic. So if I come prioritizing my partner and they come prioritizing me, then everybody's getting up. It's alchemic, and we're taking care of each other. So that's just something that I like to do in general. I had a partner tell me once, it's not necessarily the mechanics or the things that you do. It's just the fact that you prioritize me is what makes me open up. You know what I mean? Because I don't have the demands of creating the pleasure. Like I feel like a lot of women feel. A lot of women feel like, if I don't please him, we didn't really have sex, or this wasn't a really good experience.
It's going to be low on the dick Yelp rating. So for not a good time, if you don't want to have a good time,
not the low dick Yelp rating.
If you don't want to have a good time,
we got to do a skit on.
Well, I think to be fair, I think dick Yelp is a woman rating. But I've heard some of my women friends talk about so much of the demand that women have for the expectation of sex when they're looking for a connection or emotional resonance or an opportunity to feel heard and safe. And what they want is for that not to be connected to, well, now that I've given you this, go ahead and put them 2 lips on the TLC tip.
I got to get mine.
Yeah. Also, Tupac, MC Breed. I gotta get mine. I gotta get yours.
You gotta get yours.
Yeah, gotta get mine. You gotta get yours. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's something that really needs to be surfaced. I'm glad Shan brought it up, and I know you've been a big proponent of that. Even on our TikTok, that one of the TikToks we had, you used Dr. Tara, who's on Love Bites, also great, where she talked about that. Do you just give her oral pleasure just for the sake of oral pleasure? Just, as guys, we know that. Some days you just want head for the sake of head. We want it too.
Yeah, for sure.
Without having the demand of, well, now I got to do this and interrupt my day, what I was going to do after, taking this bliss with me out into my day, which is ultimately, if you're having morning sex or you're giving morning head to your woman, is ideal for her. Taking that bliss with her out into her day.
Wait, we had shared a clip about that, a couple of months ago where this girl was like, you should never leave your man, or you should always make sure your man busts before he leaves the house.
Yeah.
You should never leave a man he should never walk out the house with a hard penis or something.
Yeah. But I think a lot of women would say, yo, son,
we want the same thing.
Yeah. You should never leave the house without giving my clitoris the love.
How about it?
She deserves.
How about she deserves.
Love your woman's clitoris deserves. Honor. Or better yet, and go back to season 1, yes, the worship her clitoris deserves.
Facts.
All right, so let's transition again to another part of the show, which I thought was really good: busyness, the specter of busyness, and how much busyness just plagues long-term committed relationships. Now we see that with people who have children, right? It goes from routine to routine to routine.
Oh, that's a whole nother level of busy.
To routine. I mean, it just goes on and on. Erica,
so break it down.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, break it down. But even people who don't have children, marriage becomes about routine because some of the benefits we talked about, the social science researchers have talked about with marriage come from routine. We're making sure every month we're putting money into the IRA. We're paying the rent at a certain time. We're putting enough money away for this vacation. All that requires and demands good habits and routine.
Planning, yeah.
Where and how does routine fit into having ecstatic sex when it just seems like we're so busy as committed couples out here?
That's a good question. I mean, we've heard before. I don't remember where, but probably just in being at church. I remember a pastor talking about scheduling sex.
Yeah.
In the same way that you have all these other parts of your routine. There's breakfast time. There's dropping the kids off. There's picking the kids up. There's going to work. So you almost have to make sex a part of your schedule if that's the way you live your life. Now, some people, they have a little bit more open schedule. Maybe you're an entrepreneur and you only say, hey, I'm going to work 4 hours in a day. And if you're able to do that and you have, more free time, maybe you and your partner can have more of that spontaneous sex. But if you have these routines and most of your life is kind of lived based on a schedule, sex has to be a part of the schedule.
Yeah. And I think there's nothing wrong with scheduling sex. I remember hearing a podcast about 8 years ago where a psychologist, was saying women's hormones go from kind of vixen mode to nesting mode, as she called it. And scheduling sex actually gives you something to look forward to. It makes it a priority, And by prioritizing it, it becomes something that gets done because a lot of us, because we need routines and habits to get things done, because you, as most people would argue, are a culmination of the habits that you do.
Yeah.
So how can you have a thriving sex life if you don't make it a habit? And how do you not make it a habit if it does become part of your to-do list or your scheduling?
What's that? 7 habits of a successful.
It's like 7 habits of highly effective. 7 habits of highly effective orgasms.
It has to be part of the schedule. Yeah, it has to be part of the schedule. You're working out the same way you make time to work out. You make time to eat. You make time to shower. You make time to dress for everything. I mean, I think scheduling sex, or at least making it a part of the schedule, like you said, it gives you something to look forward to. And when you're looking forward to something and it's part of your schedule, you show up. I think you show up with better energy.
Yeah, for sure you do. Absolutely. And like you said, it gives you something to really show up and just bring your peak self to your peak attention and focus to.
Like if you notice the only time you got for it, you got to show up with good energy.
Yeah. You'll say that and say, oh, I really need this time. I really need to make sure that I'm bringing my A game. But I think another thing that he mentioned about long-term sex that I think was pretty powerful, and KevOnStage gave this analogy, and that analogy is about food, right? Sex, when you get married, is like food. Sometimes you just got something on the crock pot, you got something cooking, you got something working in the back, and you know what? That's great home cooked meal. Other times you go out to steak and you get some food and it's amazing. You're at Noble, you're at this high price restaurant. That's great. Sometimes you just get that peanut butter and jelly sandwich and you call it a day.
Do you right?
And it does you right. Now, we know peanut butter and jelly for most people is not as good as filet mignon, but that's just the reality of life. Being in a long-term committed relationship is you find these opportunities to maximize sex, but it may not be in these grandiose pornographic ways where we have these pornified minds where we're just like, it has to be this way. But if that doesn't work for you and your partner and your time constraints, why would you go that way anyway?
Right. Or put those demands on yourself to have that Michelin star quality sex where you don't have to talk. Or like we're talking about, if you know this is the only time you have it, you got to go the extra mile to create the environment for
absolutely. Absolutely. So, I think that's something to keep in mind, because when we talk about sex over the long haul, things change. And another book I read, Sexual Intelligence, the author talked about how a lot of us hold in our minds, right? We hold in our minds our 25-year-old sex self, even though we're 35, 45, 55, 65, 75. We still think,
hope I'm having sex at 70.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's why I work out. That's why I eat right. That's why I take supplements. I'm really trying to be.
I want to be beating it down.
Oh, 80, 85. I really do, guys. That's just my own personal preference. Ding. But what he talked about in that is the problem with that kind of thinking is you are missing out on the opportunities or the realities that are happening in the present day. For example, maybe, now that you're 45, you're 55, you take a certain type of medication that makes your mouth dry, but you're so busy thinking about your 25-year-old self that you are operating out of arrogance, and you won't just put a glass of water right by the bedside so that you could take a drink of water in the midst of having sex. I mean, you're still having powerful, majestic sex, but now it's getting ruined because you really aren't taking care of your body while you're doing it. And what could happen is the quality of the sex starts to go down, all because you were just being arrogant about a glass of water by the bed.
Yeah,
things have changed.
It's hard to have quality sex with cotton.
Exactly. Big time.
You want to kiss, you might want to go down or kiss certain parts of the body. It's hard to do that with sandpaper mouth.
Yeah. So, we talk about long-term sex. You are going to change. You are going to evolve. Your body will change as well. It doesn't always mean it's going to go, into decrepitude, but you want to keep yourself open to the various changes and slight additions you may need to make in order to still have a pleasurable, majestic experience. What do you think is a takeaway for this episode for those who may not go and watch the episode? We recommend it, but you may not watch it. You don't have time. You're watching us. Thank you, by the way. What do you recommend people take away from this episode as far as long-term committed sex?
Well, one, you have to be transparent with each other about where you're at in your sex journey. I realize a lot of people are going to get this information while they're probably in the journey. So I would just say, be as honest and open as possible about where you are. I would say definitely think about ways that you can schedule sex or place sex into your schedule and your routine. And then the third thing I would say is have more conversations about the level of freaky that y'all both want to reach. Kevin and Miss KevOnStage talked about, I'm going to call her Melissa. But they talk about this red, yellow, green list that they have. And it's like the red is just off limits no matter what. Under no circumstances are we engaging in that. And then you have the yellow list, which might be, hey, when we on vacation, this is okay. This is cool. And then green is just, listen, it doesn't matter what the circumstances are. We can get down like this at any given time. So I think that's something that a lot of people could probably benefit from, is having your red, yellow, and green list.
Yeah. I think one of the takeaways from the episode is to be patient with each other and your evolution. And Kev talked about Melissa's, thank you, giving her name and not calling her Mrs. KevOnStage.
Oh, she goes by that.
Yeah. But but we want to preserve everyone's identity and individuality.
Right.
He talked about her evolution, when he first married her, because she was a virgin, he was not. She was taught in her church tradition, well, what if I don't want to have sex and he does? Well, just lay there because that's your obligation.
Lay down and be nice.
Yeah, lay down and be nice, which has its own problems with it, which we can talk about in another episode. But now she's empowered. She's familiar with herself, and he loves the fact that she'll come into the room and be like, I'm doing this. I'm taking this. This is mine. This moment's for me. It's not about you. And being powerful and assertive. And I think you have to leave room for the evolution of you and your partner to take hold and to transform your sex life, to enhance it, to make it better, to add more facets, or for you to see more facets of that diamond, right? To see how the light's reflecting it. There's always more beauty there. The more you observe, the more you take time for the observation to take place. So definitely recommend for anyone out there, be patient and trust the process that happens with you as you mature and you age. Some aging, and I think getting older, doesn't always come with decrepitude. I think so much of that happens, and I know I get caught up in that. Jay hears it all the time. But for me, man, as you go along, there's going to be more opportunity to grow and evolve.
Yeah. So sex be hard, marriage be hard, but there's always a solution in that.
Yeah. Light at the end of the tunnel. Before we wrap up, if you haven't checked out, we're on social media. Check us out on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, at Love God, Love Sex Pod. Definitely check out our TikTok. We have over, I think, close to 200 videos now, and we have that video we talked about where we talked about the Just Cuz ministry. And James will be doing some more on TikTok about that, because we just think there's so much that can be said about it, and we all need to hear it, ourselves included. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Peace.